Over to you, John.
Right. Well, I have to warn you, I don't have a very cheery message for encouraging spirit in this presentation. Um, the rise of the far right is very serious. It's happened before. There have been upturns and tick-ups in the uh, popular support for far right groups and parties. But the evidence coming in now is something more substantial and something that is even surviving some potentially embarrassing revelations about some of the thugs and criminals and gangsters that are in or around the far right. So that's the first thing. And the second thing about it is that it is part of a wider movement. We can see in among nearly all our European neighbours, they are facing variants on the same phenomenon. They don't all call themselves the same thing or precisely stand in unity with each other on a variety of different domestic political issues in the different European countries. But everywhere, I think without exception, the far right is picking up, and in some places they are picking up very significantly. And to give two examples, it is possible that the French crisis we see with the deadlock between the major political parties could see a move to invite the Front National to try at least and form a new government. They will not merely be hangers-on or potential partners. They could be, may even likely be, called on to try and form a government. I don't think it will necessarily succeed, but it does bring a further step forward in the position of the far right within the national politics of France. And frankly, it's not very difficult to see the same thing happening with our very different electoral system and other differences in circumstances. The opinion polls at the moment, and I think I've been through all the ones of any substance, are telling the same story, which is evidence of far right Reform Party, so called, winning seats in by-elections, both municipal, local authority, and potentially national. And indeed, the forecasts were made by virtually all of the leading pollsters is that were an election to be held in the foreseeable immediate future, short-term future, um, the Reform Party would emerge as the largest party, quite clearly the largest party, with the largest number of MPs, and therefore the party that would, in all probability, be called upon to try and form a coalition government. I don't think, I stand to be corrected if somebody's seen other figures that I may have missed, but that seems to be virtually unanimous across the polling organizations. So what we're seeing is something on a scale that we've not seen for a very long time. Now, there have been previous upturns in the threat represented by the far right since the end of the Second World War. I'm old enough, maybe even some others are, to remember both the attempt by Oswald Mosley to revive his pre-war fascist movement in the late 40s, very early 50s, which flopped ignominiously. And we had a more serious threat from the far right in the 60s and 70s, but nowhere did they succeed in offering, in posing a threat to be primary political players in the system. That is to say, so successful through by-elections and through winning at a general election that even if they don't have the numbers to be an absolute majority by themselves, they're in a bargaining position to hive off maybe dissident Tory right-wingers, fed up with the apparent decline of their party towards something like disappearance. I mean, the Tory party, one of the stories of our immediate times, not the most important one, but an important one nonetheless, is the collapse of the Tory party organizationally, financially, as well as in voting terms. It is showing all the signs of implosion. And this is, of course, the reverse side of the coin of the rise of the far right and of reform. Now, that rise in reform is at the moment under the control of, frankly, quite sophisticated party tacticians who are sufficiently sophisticated to keep the ultra hardline thug element, open, violent element of the far right, with who have penetrated their party significantly, under control or under veiled curtains. There's sufficient evidence at the moment that the leadership of reform is got enough authority to rule out anything that might look like seeking power from the streets rather than through the parliamentary system. But that can change. Uh, at the moment, they are capable of producing depressingly large numbers on rallies. The 150,000 was the biggest turnout, as I said, that any far-right party has been able to mobilize, to my knowledge, since the end of the war against the Nazis. So we have a serious problem. Now, the other depressing fact is that most of the other parties in our system think the only thing they can do, or rather the best thing they can do, is keep their heads down and not challenge or seek to openly frustrate and counter-mobilize against the rise of reform. Now, I think this is a recipe for an electoral catastrophe. Okay, it's whatever it is, 2.5, 3 years, is it? 3.5, maybe. All kinds of things can happen. And I've seen often enough predictions about electoral outcomes to be frustrated. But unless some truly momentous internal scandal is emerged, or clear evidence that the quasi-paramilitary far right that are on the fringes and within reform are losing, are no longer under control. Short of that, they seem to have established themselves across the board in England. I say in England, and I have to add Wales, although there the figures are a bit more contested, but they have been the fastest growing party even in Wales. But the fact is, in Scotland, it's a different story. They have grown significantly in Scotland, but they're not in any position at the moment to challenge for the leadership of the Scottish executive or to form either one party or a coalition government there. In Northern Ireland, so-called Northern Ireland, the six counties, occupied six counties of the north of Ireland, they don't have the same pull because the kind of far right elements are grouped around a range of rival far right unionist, orange unionist factions. So in a way, their terrain is occupied, but they would be some of those people would be enthusiastic allies with the rise of a reform potential government or leading a coalition. So I think, frankly, that is the scale of the problem. It is, as I say, not dissimilar. In fact, it's quite closely mirrored by what is happening elsewhere with the Front National, as I said, in France, with both the Flemish and the Walloon far right in Belgium, with the Utrecht in the Netherlands, with Alternative Deutschland in Germany. Uh, Paradoxically, not yet quite so serious, but growing in Italy and in Spain, both of whom have had their experiences of fascist regimes in the living memory, at least, of many Italians and many Spanish. So I don't think the the analysis that starts from the growth of real mobilizing power, the power to mobilize in the streets as well as the voting booths, can be seriously contested. At the moment, the other parties are like a bunch of hens disturbed. They're clacking in every known direction, have no idea how to respond. But the Reform Party has been able to consolidate its hold on a significant number, not a vast number yet, of local authorities. They are, if not in complete control, they are the largest and therefore the dominant party in some very important municipal authorities, particularly in parts of the north, east and northwest, parts of the Midlands. They're weakest in London. The far right is by far the weakest area for them, the one which has shown the least return for their campaigning activities is the Greater London area. The second thing I think we need to note is that although the leadership of the Reform Party speaks in very measured parliamentary terms, there are people at quite high level in its ranks for whom violence is, to say no more, an issue which cannot be ducked. And they put it by saying we need to prepare for the violence against us. And in that, they have been encouraged by open incitement so to do by some of the most senior people advising and surrounding Trump in Washington, who argue that, including the boss of one of the biggest financial companies in the United States of America, that they're saying you will need to prepare not to attack anybody, wouldn't dream of suggesting that, but to defend yourselves because you're going to be under threat. And so we are, I don't think in my political lifetime, it's sometimes suited, frankly, shallow and sectarian thinking on the left to constantly be talking about the imminence of a right-wing threat, a right-wing threat to bourgeois democracy, a right-wing threat to civil liberties, a right-wing threat to freedom of speech, etc. It has normally been exaggerated and perhaps understandably sometimes oversold. But I think this time, and I'm reinforced in this by the measured way in which the Reform Party is slowly managing its strategy and its tactics of growth and so on. They are not going to put that at risk in the immediate future lightly. So, uh, the second thing I think that it's important to say, because this might not have been the case, but it is the case, that this is occurring at a time when internationally, but in particular in this country, we look as though we are heading for some very stormy economic times, turbulence.